it in.
Welcome to the Fire Away Podcast. That is the Fire Away Podcast. Oh yeah, here we go. Let's do it.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Fire Away Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Meyer. I'm here with Fred Anders.
Hey.
And Matt Williams. What's going on, guys?
What's up, guys?
Whole crew's here today. Check us out on Instagram, Fire_Away Podcast on Instagram. Catch up on all episodes anywhere you get your podcast. We are on all major platforms. And we have the one and only Miss Anna Gavin here today.
Hello.
Hi, Anna. Welcome back to the show for the third or fourth time.
I'm like a pro.
Yeah,
I think it's my fifth because I did Cindy, I did ours, I did Krista's.
I think it's definitely
my fourth.
safe to say she's a friend of the show for sure.
She sure is.
I love me a microphone too.
Yeah. We have
My husband and I both.
So does Mark.
Yeah, I know. I get picked on now all the time. That's okay. We were talking about how everybody hates the sound of their voice, and Fred was like, except Mark.
You really do love the sound of your voice.
I guess. I just like to tell stories. I just like to talk.
Stories are fun.
Stories are fun. So this was a special episode today. We brought you in here specifically to speak about the partnership with Encore and just a little bit more, I guess, I don't want to say your side of the story, but the stuff that some people might not know, and I think people are interested to hear about. And I think you were interested to talk, or excited to talk about, I should say. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of questions going around. It's still kind of fresh. It's been about a month. Yep. So welcome and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity because it's one of those things where we told everybody and you don't have all the time in the world to tell the whole story and answer the questions. And so this is actually like a really nice opportunity because I don't think a lot of owners get this opportunity to kind of tell the full story. And I appreciate it because one of the pieces of advice I was given was, nobody cares what your decision-making process was. They just want to know how it's going to affect them. And ultimately in the initial conversation, that is the thing that's important, right? How is this going to affect you? Because that's the thing that's going through everyone's head. I would hope now after a month, everybody's realizing it's not anything crazy. I mean, I know I'm looking at Matt, who his life has changed a lot because there's a lot of vehicle stuff going on. But for the most part, it's been really great. But I do want to tell, kind of the story of how we got here because it is a family business and it is, as Fred and I were talking earlier, it is a kind of an end of an era. Oh gosh, where do I start?
So well, let's start with how did all this transpire? How long has this been in the making, and like what kind of got you to where you are?
So, okay, let's think about it this way. When I first took over, it was 2010, roughly, early 2010. And Dad had just died. And you got to think, what was the main driver for why I decided to do this at that point in time? What do you guys think it was?
Wasn't much of a choice, was it?
Yeah, well, it was partially, we could have sold it back in 2010.
True.
We could have just said we didn't know. Yeah, the rumors were flying back then.
Flying.
And it was a recession, like everybody was scared, right? We could have done that. But yeah, it was to keep it going. It was partially, honestly, what drove me for the first, at least few months, but really for the first year, was I was sad. My dad died. I wanted to it was the thing he loved, and so I wanted to keep the thing he loved going, right? Like that's kind of it was part of the grief process for me, really.
Yeah, I got to keep it a part of him in you while you're doing what he was doing. So that makes sense. Sitting
it
in
was
his chair,
really a big grief. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think so that kept me going for the first year. Then I started going to industry meetings, right? And I started going out in the industry and out in the world. And then I got a little bit of an ego and a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And I think what drove me for those following few years was I want to prove that I can do it, right? There was a little bit of that in there, right? Because this is a hard job. It's a heavy lift. It's emotionally draining. It was especially difficult when, I was inheriting an entire team of people that I didn't necessarily select. And so,
and those meetings and all that we're getting into, that's predominantly male.
Right. So there was a lot of okay, little girl.
Yeah.
And I think I've talked about this before. I think being a woman was less of a disadvantage. I think it was being young was the disadvantage. And so I wanted to prove myself, right? I was this starry-eyed 20-something that I was I'm going to make this amazing. And I'm going to stick it to all these guys that are betting against me, right? And that kept me going for a while. But that can't keep going forever, right? And what really kept me going for a long time was this vision of, I really want to get the company. I had this, and I cannot articulate it perfectly, but I had this vision of what I wanted the company to look like, because it's hard to explain to those of you who weren't here 15 years ago what it looked like back then, both visually and, we didn't have meetings. We didn't have, we did, but they were not the same as now, how we have frequent communications and meetings. The technology was abysmal. The professionalism was sketchy. So
It's a good word for it.
Sketchy.
there was not a lot of professionalism. It was a very, and so I was really kind of focused on I had this vision, right? And so fast forward years later, we did a lot of things and we made a lot of movement, and I'm incredibly proud of what we've achieved. And I had, a 1-year plan, I had 5-year plans, and then I really did have kind of a long-term 10-year plan in my mind. And we surpassed a lot of those things over the years. And then, so my long-term plan ultimately, when I first took over and really started getting into this, was I'm going to do this until I'm 55, and then I'm going to just retire early, right? And that was it. I would get calls, I would get maybe 5 calls a week from either M&A firms, investment bankers, private equity, strategic buyers, Cintas, like you name them, right? All the different players like that were back in the day. There's a lot more now.
When did they start?
They probably from day one.
From day one.
From day one.
So you've been getting them since. Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and to be expected. Then 2020 happened, and it totally changed the market. The market was traditionally fragmented, and like Cintas got in the game in like 2005, where they were the ones that were trying to do this whole like, we're going to buy people up. And then I think that didn't really catch on until later in the 2010s, right? And then Pipe Barker started getting into it, and some other players, and there were some that were out there you probably just didn't even know about, and people were dabbling in it. But COVID hit, and that's what changed a lot of the baby boomers who were running these businesses. They were like, I'm done. right. Understandably. And a lot of fire protection companies were founded in the 70s and 80s. So it's a lot of baby boomers. So these people were kind of getting close to retirement, but we saw that mass retirement happening after COVID, right? Because it just wore everybody down. And so that really ramped up the kind of condensing of the market, right? And that really ramped up a lot of the deals that were happening. Then it was post-COVID. It was no less than 25 phone calls a week.
Are you serious?
And I'm not even over exaggerating that. It might be more. I got text messages. I got messages on LinkedIn. I got phone calls. I got emails of people looking. I mean, it really ramped up. And then the number of players out there that were buying up companies really ramped up.
I had them reaching out to me. Like I had emails coming from them to that past one. You say, hey, MC Dean was one of them.
Yeah. I mean, we had letters. I would get mailed all sorts of things. I do like this, but somebody mailed me cheese because they heard that I like cheese. In an interview I did once where I said I wanted to be a cheesemonger, and they literally mailed me cheese. Somebody mailed me a baseball bat and was like, let's knock it out of the park together, right? Like you name it. I got mailed an iPad recently.
Now, did you think about buying other companies out at that time at all?
No, because we've done a little bit of acquisition. I mean, we did John Hutman's company and AAA, and we've done a couple small deals that you guys probably don't even know about. They were literally like account deals. There were no employees involved or anything. But it just wasn't my wheelhouse. I wasn't really comfortable with it. You guys know me. Like I like culture. I like the people part of things, but the finance and the investment, and I'm not super risk. I'm more risk averse than I am anything else. And so, there's some risk element into that, and it just was not my comfort zone. So it was not something I did. But so the market changed, right? Everybody was, you guys have seen it. The market is condensing, whether we like it or not. And so, it was 2021 and everybody's calling, right? So you're getting it constant and it's never ending. So there's a little bit of that. But I'm all telling them, I'm ignoring all of them, right? I haven't answered any of them. Or if it's somebody I knew, I was like, thank you, but I'm still young. I got time. And then we did the renovation, and we renovated these buildings. So it was a combination of factors. So 2021, I'm feeling a little bit burned by the end of 2021. I'm definitely tired because we did the renovation. It's post-COVID. I didn't even get a burnout period because I had to go straight into 2021 and doing a $3.5 million renovation and doing 2 jobs at that time. And it was stressful because all of your routines are off, right? You're not sitting in your normal spaces. So I was pretty burned at the end of 2021. But then beyond that, it was also visually, we got to the end of 2021 and all these buildings look so beautiful, right? And visually, I was like, oh my God, we have reached the vision that I set 15 years ago. Like that was kind of the last piece of this vision that I had in my mind of what the company was going to be like. And I was like, oh God, I gotta make another 10, 15 year plan. Ooh, right. Like that was a little exhausting. I was like, I don't know if I've never dreamed we would get this far. Or I did, but I didn't,
Not this
I don't know.
fast.
It just happened,
Yep.
you know, and so, you know, visually it was a reminder that we had really achieved a lot of what I had set out to do. And I didn't really know how to take us the next level. So it was partially the market changing. It was partially, you know, I felt like I had hit the long-term vision and I wasn't sure I had it in me to do another epic long-term vision. And also that I didn't know how is partially part of it. I also started to come to the realization that we were getting close to hitting 50 million as a company, right? In revenue, top line revenue. And when you're a $50 million company, things change, right? So there's little change points in a lot of different businesses, right? There's the $5 million, well, you hit the $1 million mark. Hey, we're $1 million company now. Now we're a 5 million. Now we're a 10 million. Now we're a 20 million. And then it kind of jumps to 50. And then from 50, the jump is to 100. And I'm like, I am not the right person to take this from 50 to 100. I don't know how to do that. I could learn. I don't know if I have it in me. That's not what I'm looking to do. So, you know, I started having those kind of thoughts, right? Oh my gosh, it's just growing now at a more exponential rate. And I'm starting to kind of get in over my head a little bit.
And I guess once we got to the 52 and where we're at, there's always that fear too that to the next jump to 100 or we regress. And we don't want to do that either, right?
Right.
So
You can't go backwards.
Kind of stuck where you're at.
You have to keep growing, and it's also hard because there's not a lot of models like in our industry. There's not a lot of companies that are this
better
big in our
doing it the
industry.
right way
No, exactly,
and,
right.
and staying the same. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was a little bit of that kind of mindset going on. So these are things that are churning in my mind, right? Like no official decision had been made. And then 2022 happened. And ooh, if you think you felt burned out at the end of 20 or 21, I thought I was like, oh man, I'm so tired at the end of 21. Then 2022 happened. We had 2 major things happen in 2022. What happened in 2022? Do you remember?
Well, here
We
one
had a
thing.
mass exodus of employees.
That was one of them.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to speak. I was just saying that's when I feel like we started to feel the effects of COVID. In
Correct.
Our industry was 2
That was the
years
supply
later.
chain challenge,
Yeah.
right? So when you have a product that usually takes you 6 weeks, now it's taking you 6 months to get in, and you have people screaming at you and customers that are threatening liquidated damages, and it was really intense. So the supply chain was kind of the first half of the year. We really felt it. And the price increases. Oh my gosh. the
one
price
after
increases.
another, they
One
were just
after
rolling
another. I mean,
in.
it was
Yeah.
epic, right? It was just hit after hit after hit. And I hadn't even come up for air yet because my 21 was spent doing this renovation. So that was brutal. And then the back half of the year is when there was the major spike in labor shortage. And the government and some of our competitors and people were going out and they were throwing crazy money at people. And we had a pretty big mass exodus. It hit one of our big departments in fall of 2022. So I was feeling a little tired by the end of that year. And the one of the things, the aha moment that really hit me. So I had all these things kind of churning in my head, right? Like the market's changing. Are we going to be able to keep up with it? You know, I don't know if I'm the right person to do this. All these like secret doubts that you're starting to have in your head. Then you lose a bunch of employees. And when the employees left, we had a couple of them leave. And they were getting offered crazy money, and it was like, I can't give you that money because if I give that to you, then I got to give it to like
The rest of them.
everybody, and I don't have that, right? We were running really lean, so Fireline as a business has always had very very low margins. We're not an overly profitable company because I put a lot of money into the business, and I was just here to keep it going. I wasn't really trying to like grow its value or anything, and I always was kind of a little bit pretentious about that, right? Like, oh, I'm investing in making it a nice place for me to want to go work and spend time with my employees and make everybody happy. And I put all my time and energy into making these nice, happy things. And the realization was, at the end of the day, it's still a job and people still got to make money. And so if you're not investing in the business and the business isn't growing and making money, you're not investing in them. And so 3 employees that were leaving came up to me and they're like, we really love it here. It's a great business. You've done a great job. It would be really, it's nice to know we can always come back if it doesn't work out. And I went, no, screw you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to be your backup girlfriend that, you get to go leave me in the lurch and then come back if it makes sense. And then also, so that was a little bit frustrating. And then I had a couple other employees say to me, they were like, Fireline's a great place to work, but it just doesn't pay as well, right? Like there's other places that are willing to offer me more money to go. And
benefits too. I mean, benefits was a part of that as well.
Benefits was part of it. Yeah, it's a full comp package.
Yeah.
And that was the aha moment for me where I went, oh, I have invested so much in trying to make it a nice business and a nice place to work, but it has to be profitable and it has to earn revenue and profit in order to fund the growth and fund and I wasn't paying attention to inflation really. And now it did spike in 2022 and then it dropped back down. It was kind of 2022 was a correction.
Yep.
That was an anomaly year. It's not, it went back to normal kind of increased rates, but I didn't, I wasn't tracking the inflation. And so I kind of felt like I got caught off guard and I was ashamed of that because I was not doing what I should have been doing as a business leader, which just made it more aware of the fact that I was getting in over my head at a certain point. And so I was low. I was real low at the end of 22. I don't know if y'all saw me. I was not in a good place. I usually can bounce back pretty quick. And Shannon,
there were whispers. I mean, people could
Yeah.
definitely see it on your face.
Oh, I
as
was
you
done.
walked around, for sure.
I was feeling low. And normally I do. I'm like, I feel low, but then I bounce back and I'm like, okay, how are we going to tackle this? Right. But I couldn't shake it. And Shannon and Rich sat me down and they were like, we love you, but we think you need some therapy. We think, and like in a genuine way,
Yep.
right? Which was not wrong. I needed to talk to somebody. I was not dealing with stress well. Like it was just, I think it was years of one thing after another had kind of piled up. And so end of 2022, got myself a therapist. I'm a strong promoter. I think we talked about this on one of the podcasts. Mental health, very important.
Sure.
And it's just a temporary thing. I just needed somebody to talk to for a little while to get through stress. And in that process of talking through it is when I finally said out loud, I think it's time for me to hand off the company. I hadn't said it out loud. I had been apparently internalizing it for about a year.
Yep.
More than that, maybe. But it wasn't until, therapy that I really kind of said it out loud and said, I think I'm not the right person to take this the next level and I need help. Right. So that's kind of where that got me to the decision. And then I had to do, what I think is, I think I'm going to tell you all right now, I feel like we did a really good job and I did this strategically. I have a beautiful business board that I work with and a business coach, and they really walked me through a lot of decision making over the years. And one of the big things they're focused on is do things thoughtfully. And so I went to a panel. It was like a networking thing where they had a panel of people talking about like, hey, if you want to transition your business, what do you have to know? It was like a lawyer and an accountant and people who had sold their business recently and people talking about it. And there was a couple pieces of advice that I think were really important. One was, if you do go through this process, you have to know you're going to be running your business from 9 to 5 and you're selling your business from 5 to midnight. And that's no joke. And I was like, well, I have young kids. I don't want to be working until midnight every night for forever during this process. So I need to prepare for that. And so what I started doing was saying, okay, how can I delegate some of my tasks so that I can spend some of my time on this during the day and focus on it so I'm not working till midnight every night. Fun fact, that's a total joke. I ended up working till midnight every night. But I was trying to, so I started delegating because I also wanted to make sure the company was in a place where they don't need me day to day to be able to run. And frankly, you guys were already there. And then the other piece of advice that was given to me was you don't decide to sell your business and then do it in 3 months. It doesn't happen that way. I mean, some people do reactionally, but they don't do it well. If you want to do it right, you start years in advance.
Yeah, there's a lot of boxes to check off, I'm sure.
A ton of boxes. Yeah. And you want to do it in a thoughtful way. So I spent all of 2023, it wasn't like a full-time job, but I spent most of 2023 every week doing a little bit of research, right? What does the process look like? How do I want to do this? Because I could go straight to Pie Barker and say, I had a great relationship with them. They're great. They're Profit Zoom users. I know them really well. And I could have just gone to them and said, hey, let's make a deal, right? But I wanted to understand what the process was and who the players were and know that.
And you still had a vision, though. You had a vision. You still had a vision of Fireline in the future, and that had to go into play as far as what you're trying to do.
Exactly. It was. I don't want to just pick somebody for the sake of picking someone, right? I needed to make sure it was the right partner, and so I wanted to know who all the players were. And I am normally a gut decision maker. I'm like, give me 3 bullet points and I'm good to go. I went against all of the grains in my fiber in my body, and I really meticulously researched and meticulously went through this epically long process. So in 2023, I really spent most of 2023 researching and then also trying to mentally prepare the company for what it takes to make it, a good company. And I had a strategic assessment done. I had a valuation done. And the problem with the valuation is they're valuing your business, but they don't understand the market entirely. So there were some surprises in store once we actually started talking to the market. Fireline's a pretty well-known entity and got a lot of attention, a lot more attention than we thought. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but
hey, this is your
that's why you're here.
It's your story.
But yeah, so it was a mental thing where I had to make sure my head was in it and my heart was in it, right? And so 2022, my heart really made the decision, right? My heart was like, this is what's right for Fireline, right? I'm not what's best for Fireline anymore, is really what it came down to.
Well, so with that thought, I mean, we're kind of on like what the deciding factors were and kind of going through that motion. Obviously, you have 2 young kids. How did that play into, a legacy going on to them and not being able to? Did you have conversations with them? I mean, I know they're both pretty young, but as far as what that looked like for the next steps for them as well.
Yeah, it was funny because Ben is older, so he's a little more keenly aware. We did not talk to Libby about this at all because she can't keep a secret to save her life. So she got Libby is 9, so she didn't get any of it. Yeah. She found out like with the rest of my family on Christmas Day, which is when I told my family. No, Ben's, he's 15 now. He knew. I think he used to think like this was an option for him. He likes business. He likes economics. But what I talked to him about was I'd rather help you invest in doing something you love than handing you off a business that has all my problems. And I know that I don't know if I could easily walk away from. Like I would hover. I used to say it was a blessing and a curse that my father died because we didn't end up getting to that point where we butted heads about decision making for the company, right? And I've seen that happen in too many family businesses, and I don't know if I wanted that for him. That said, it was such a long way off, and I was like, I don't think I have another 15 years to wait or 10 years to wait to get it for him. But yeah, we did talk about it.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, 23 we researched. I knew my heart was in it, but then 23 I had to make sure my head was in it. Is this the right time? Is that you got to get the timing right? Is the market right? Is Fireline's books in order, right? Because once you go through that process, it's like getting an IRS audit times 10. So you got to make sure your stuff is together. So I spent a lot of 23 kind of preparing that, and.
At this point in time, nobody, like Shannon didn't know yet.
Nobody
Rich
knew
didn't
yet.
know. That was still all within you.
My husband knew.
Well, I mean, I'm just talking about within
and my
Fireline.
mother. Yeah, my husband
Right,
and my
right.
mother. And my mother was like, she does not care for the stress that this causes. So she was fully supportive, and nor does my husband really. I mean, Fireline is the mistress, right? And so he was like, oh, you want to like take a lot of stress off your shoulders? Sure, I'm going to support that. No, nobody knew. Shannon and Rich knew. I will say this: Shannon and Rich knew long term it was my goal to not do this forever. That I wasn't going to pass it on to the next generation. So they did know that. Okay. But they didn't know the timing, and the timing. Now Shannon will tell you, early 2024. I was like, I'm thinking about it, and it was like 10 years, and then 10 years turned into 5 years, and then 5 years turned into 3 years, and then 3 years was like, I'm doing it this year. So I kind of came down on the number real fast to them. They found out officially.
Is some of that due to the opportunities of like right now, like what the interest was?
Yes.
Kind of like, all right, I should take advantage now when I have where we're at.
I went to an investment banker, a company called Chesapeake Corporate Advisors, CCA. I had been working with them before, but I went to them in April of last year and said, let's start the process. But then I kind of kept it to myself until summer is when I told them. And that's when they found out, Shannon and Rich, officially. And that was because frankly, because I needed information in order to kind of get the process going. It is impossible. I don't know how people do it by themselves. Like, you need some people to help you. You cannot tell anyone because the deal could fall through. And if it fell through, then you're left with a whole bunch of uncertainty, right? It was important for me that you guys found out, and then it was like, and here are these great people that we're going to get to work with.
Yeah, I imagine it also the panic if people start to hear the rumor, and
We all know the rumor mongering got bad.
and the rumors started to fly around, and it was and obviously it had to. We understand why it had to be denied and all that. But, it's
Well, most of the rumors were wrong, so I was able to in good faith deny them.
It's why the government tells us aliens don't exist when we know that they do, because they don't want people to panic.
Exactly.
But yeah. So I think all that makes sense, but I can't imagine trying to keep it from everybody and family and only a small group of people knowing.
It was and you guys know me, right? So I'm a big open book, and I'm a big share bear, and so it was eating me away.
I'm sure those last couple of months, because I know,
it has to.
like, I'll admit myself, I make phone calls and I'm like, listen, what is going on?
Oh,
I know something is
you were
going
putting
on.
it to us. Most people wouldn't ask me directly, but they would ask like Shannon or Rich directly. So they were dying too.
Yep.
I mean, they were in a tough situation. So, I mean, going back, like I decided to go to market, which is a thing, right? You can either go directly to somebody and say, hey, I'd like to negotiate a deal, or go to market. I chose to go to market because I felt like I owed it to myself to like get to know all the players and know what the opportunities were. So you put a book together of like how your business is doing and like little summary book. And my investment banker sent it out to market, and they only sent it to strategic fire buyers. So I didn't send it out to like the full private equity world. I just sent it out to strategic people who were buying, companies in the fire space. And that went out in the summer. And then what happens is you sign an NDA, and then you get to see the book, and you get to say, oh, this is Fireline, and you get to understand who it is. People just don't adhere to their NDAs is why the rumor mongering got out there, right?
Sure.
And that's why. And so that's a downfall of going to market. It is a big downfall, is that you're putting that knowledge out there to a pretty wide audience in the market, some of which have competitor space and whatnot. There was people in this process that have businesses locally. So that's a downside. That's a big downside to going to market. But we put it out there, and then August of last year, we said, okay, everybody has the book. You've answered questions. Everybody throw in your first offers. So what you do is you put in a thing called an IOI. You put in a first offer, and then that first offer goes in, and then you narrow down that list of people who make an offer, and then you pick the top ones you like, and then you have a bunch of meetings, and you do a lot of long conversations, and then those people give you their like final offer, right? It's kind of a bidding process.
So those offers, is it strictly financial offers that you're looking at? Because at this point in time, you really are you still getting an idea of the company themselves? Is that up to you to research when the money comes in? Here's the offer. All right, well, let me look into the company a little bit and kind of see what they're about.
So it's an in between. So the in between world from that first back of the napkin offer to that final offer is when you're really looking beyond the numbers, right? The numbers are just helping you narrow down who's serious about the deal versus who's not. So my investment banker called me and he said, "Listen, I normally get about 5 to 6 initial offers for a company." He said, "You've got so much interest. I mean, people are blowing me up." And he's like, "I think you might get as many as 10." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then the day of, he calls me and he goes, "You got 19." And that's when he was like, "You broke the record. Like, no one's gotten that many offers in our company before, like when we've sent somebody out to market." So that was very flattering. My ego was very appeased. I was very happy because that was a lot of offers. And then the reality of there's a downside to that, which is, how do you narrow down 19?
You have 19 to pick from.
So, like I said,
work.
the numbers are really just, who's serious. Because there was a handful of people who like tossed a number out there, but we were like, all right, like you're a third of what everybody else is. So, and then you do go to. So then what we decided was, he said normally we would pick 3 and have dinners and do these meetings, but unfortunately you can't just pick 3. And I was like, I don't even know if I can pick 7 right now. I don't know these people well enough. I don't know what their model is. How would they integrate? What would Fireline keep its name? Would we be able to keep our software? What does the integration process look like? What do we do about the competitors down the street? There's a lot of questions. So what we decided to do was phone calls first. So we had like a 1-hour phone call with all of the companies. It's a lot of saying the same story over and over again. And that was just me, and I was just sitting on the calls. And so then I was able to say, so Shannon and Rich weren't involved at this point, because I kind of wanted to get it to a short list of Anna preferred, because ultimately it's my choice. And the hour-long conversations were very telling. There was like a few where I was like 5 minutes in, I was like, God, I got to sit on another 55 minutes of this call because I know that this is not a person I want to do business with. And from there, we narrowed it down to 7. And then we had 7 very long meetings downtown. And then, of course, it's extra shady because me, Rich, and Shannon are having to like come up for reasons why we have
Not
like
here.
4-hour time blocks on our calendar downtown, and we're not here, right? And but I did bring Rich and Shannon into that process because I wanted them to hear, because it was really important to me that even though it was ultimately my decision, I wanted to make sure they were bought in on who the new player is, and they had say in it, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to have to be executing a lot of the integration piece. And it was great because I had other people to talk it through with too, which was really important. But I was trying to keep it as limited to just the two of them for the longest time. And so we had 7 meetings with 7 great companies. But the companies are very different, right? Very different. And I'll get into why I picked Encore, but I mean, they were like a standout from the minute we met them, compared to others. And then we had like, I think 5 more meetings after we met Encore, and we kept comparing everybody to Encore. It started to become very apparent that was the preferred favorite. There was one
Were
or
there
two.
any local?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There was a couple local, or that have local presence. You mean?
Yep.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes. And I think, so there's different models. And so this is where I kind of want everybody, I want to do a little like humor me with like a really quick, what is private equity conversation. All of these companies are backed by private equity. And so everybody hears that and they think of evil guys in corporate suits that like sit on yachts and snort coke or whatever. I don't know what they think.
You nailed it.
They're picturing the Wolf
Wolf
of
of
Wall
Wall
Street.
Street,
Right?
yep.
Yeah,
You
that's what
nailed
they're
it.
picturing. That is not at all what it is like. It could not be farther from that. So I just need to make sure everybody understands.
Good movie, by the way.
It is a good movie. It is a good movie. That's not what it's like. It's these are people who are it's honestly it's a bunch of nerds, but it's people who are made up of investing, and the whole investment model behind private equity is you support these companies for growth. So you're giving them money to therefore grow their business, do acquisitions, buy companies, and that sort of thing. And in turn, within 3 to 5 years, you want to get about 2.5 times your return, and then they will go up to the next private equity company, because that private equity company only has so many funds to give, and then you outgrow them, and then you got to get a bigger checkbook. And it's really, that's what it is. It's a checkbook behind the scenes that can fuel a company's growth, right? It's giving them the capital to do what they need to do to grow.
Their numbers first, not people first.
Their numbers first, not people first, right? So the difference, I think, that was really key with Encore that I cannot stress enough is what we started to realize is there's 2 different types of companies out there buying. There are those that are run by the fire protection company and backed by a private equity, and there are those that are supported and backed and run by the private equity with this like face of fire protection. And that was like a super not great fit for us. So there was a couple companies where most of them brought in their private equity company with them. I would get grilled for several hours on numbers and stats and everything like that. And then they would say, okay, if you want HR or if you want IT support or everything, that comes from the private equity company that has this big back office. And then the fire company is just there to like manage the operations piece. That is not what I wanted. I did not want a private equity company being the back office. So there was only like 3 players that we talked to that were more of that Encore style where, you know, they run the business and private equity is purely just the checkbook to help with the expansion and growth. To the point where Encore was the only one that did not bring their private equity with them. And I didn't actually even ever meet those people through the whole process. And Tom will tell you, he said, you know, it's because 1, we think they scare off owners to a certain extent. And 2, we wanted to make it clear that this is
They
our
run
business.
the-
They're a
yes.
partner and a supporting partner, but they are not the ones who are making the operational decisions and the integration. So I knew I wanted a company that had its own back office and its own HR and IT to support, right? Because if we're going to grow, we have to grow those things. But we're a fire protection company, not an IT company, not an HR company. So the more I had to grow those pieces, the harder it got. And so that was really key. And then a couple of the companies that had that, some companies we talked to didn't have that. They were still growing and developing, and they were looking to us to support and provide the HR and the infrastructure part. And I was like, no, that's the areas I want more help in. Not the, I'm looking for support from the company I'm going to move up to help us grow and escalate. I don't want to be the one to help all of your little small companies you bought to get them up to our level, right? That's not stepping our game up. So it's shocking how different some of these companies are with their approach. Some of them are similar, and there's one or two that were similar to Encore, but most of them are not. And so it became very easy to kind of weed out.
Select. And I think a big thing, just from you talking so far, and something to point out to people that still might have a doubt or who have doubted since the announcement was made, sticking true to how you operate is you always have the employee at heart. You're always looking out for their well-being. And that just goes through this. You just proved that through this whole process of you explaining the process of going through this partnership. And you could have easily taken a big check and just saying, you know what, I'm done with it. I don't care. You could have looked out for yourself.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
I'm out.
You're out. But you had what you wanted and from another company to partner with. And obviously the employee was still number one in your mind.
It was, and thank you for saying that, because I know that totally makes you sound like an ass kisser, by the way, but it's absolutely true. I do have employee first. I love Matt. But it is true. And it is because I said this through the process. I used two different analogies, but ultimately I said, I really want to stick the landing, right? I don't want to just do this. I'm not making this decision for me. I'm making this decision for Fireline. It is because it's what's best for Fireline that we're going to be able to kind of move and grow with a good partner. And I don't think I would have pulled the trigger if I didn't feel like I could find a good partner. I would have been really, I'm really glad that I had a couple options, but I was nervous going into it that I wasn't going to find the right fit. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, then what?
And I know it's too, like, so obviously I was very nervous at the beginning. Like, what does this mean for everybody?
Oh, you were definitely spun up. And I think you got bought in within like a week.
Yes.
You were good.
And like culture is a big thing with you. And I know so I'm dealing a lot with Eric now. Mm-hmm. And
Eric is their fleet and safety manager.
Yeah. And like every conversation, and we're talking multiple times a week now. But like every time, like we're talking about, well, we need to do this, we need to do this, and everything's culture. Like, well, when we merged with his company, it was like Tom's big thing is culture. So it's just another mashup that works out perfect.
That was a big part of it. And honestly, I didn't realize how deep that went until we started the integration process. Mm-hmm. I knew it, they said it, but for all I know, they could have been full of it, you know, it was kind of a leap of faith at a certain point. I was like, I think this is the best deal to go through. But I didn't know it until we went through integration, and it has blown me away how much the culture drives the conversation with everyone I have talked to. I feel like I'm like the ultimate winner, because we didn't just like go through this process and successfully get through it, but I think we picked the best partner without a doubt.
I think I can see it on your face. You know what I mean? The difference between before New Year's and after New Year's.
No doubt.
Is a huge difference. And like the initial, of course you have to be a cheerleader, right? That's what everybody's saying. Well, of course you're a cheerleader. Of course Shannon's a cheerleader. Of course Rich is a cheerleader for him. They have to be. And I think the initial reaction was like, in the meeting upstairs, I felt like, I was being told Mom and Dad were getting a divorce, and I didn't get to pick who to live with, right? It was just like, all right, you're going to go live with Dad, no matter whether you like it or not. And then I was like, well, now I get to meet Mom's new boyfriend, and I didn't even know they were getting a divorce. Like, that's kind of how it was like, whoa, it was a whirlwind. And then you said it at the beginning of the podcast. You've been making decisions for Fireline to keep it Fireline for 15 years. So why would it change now, right? That was my whole big thing.
Right.
You've been putting employee first for 15 years. Why would this be any different? Just knowing you, I couldn't see that you would make that big shift to where it was like, well, all of a sudden it's going to be about me. You know what I mean? It just didn't
have
make
I
sense.
ever been that person?
No,
right?
And once the initial shock wore off, I was like, oh well, yeah, I do believe that this is for the best of Fireline.
We all know the stories of the business owners who are I'm in it for me, right? And so I would hope that's why I said in the meeting, I mean, y'all saw me, I was a nervous wreck. But that's why I said in the meeting that I would hope that my track record has proven that I've always done what's best for Fireline at the end of the day. I will say my face definitely has changed since then, because beyond just the weight of like the decision being done and picking what I think is a good partner, the last 2 months of the year were easily some of the most stressful experience of my entire life. And it was through no fault of Encore or anything else. It's just going through the due diligence process you cannot be prepared for that. I was kind of cocky because I was being told like, hey, the paperwork you're sending in is really good. You guys seem to have your act together. We're really buttoned up on all of our data. Holy moly. I really was working till midnight every night. It got to the point where in mid-January, I was sitting at my computer and my husband came in and he goes, do you got some more work to do tonight? And I go, no, I forgot that I don't have to sit at my computer all night. Like I forgot what it was like to like not be at my, I mean, I had to eat a lot of my husband's dinners because there was no, I got home and it was at work. We'd have conference calls with lawyers until like 10 o'clock at night. Oh, God bless. And actually his dinners have been much better over the years.
He should follow this guy on TikTok. I know he makes all these cooking videos. But
yeah, that process was brutal. And can I tell you too, I got to tell you guys, I pulled Linda out of retirement for that.
Oh, for the due diligence? I can't say that word.
Due diligence. So
Fred looks shocked that I can't say the word.
I'll tell you, and I know you were working because there'd be nights that you would send me an email like, so is this list up to date? And I'm thinking,
why is she
why
looking
at
at that?
10:30 at night is she sending me an email about a vehicles list? Like, who cares at this time? You know,
We were going through quote unquote a lot of audits. There was a lot of me asking like Frank about foam systems that was on the property in 1987, and he's like, why is she asking
Yeah,
this?
I had no idea. And then I would call like a finance company. I'm like, I need this agreement. Well, why do you need that? I'm like, well, the owner's asking for it. Does she always ask for it? I don't know. I'm just trying to do what I'm being asked. You know?
Yeah, so what happens is diligence it's partially a financial audit. That's the quality of earnings. So that's what I pulled Linda out of retirement for. I called Linda up and I said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. She had known that was on my radar when she retired. And I didn't want to bring Ashley in because Ashley was loaded up with work, right? And she's got 3 young kids. And this is I was told is a brutal process. It's a brutal process. So I was like, I cannot overload this poor woman with more stress. And when I told my bankers that I had a retired VP of finance, they were like, are you kidding me? That is a gift from God. You call that woman right now because she can work on it full time.
Yep.
So I called Linda and her husband, George, who had just gone through a big, he was the CFO of Easy Storage, who just sold up to Public Storage a couple of years ago. So he had been through this process and I'd been seeing them we would go for walks and stuff. And I called Linda and told her what was going on. I said, would you help me with this? And she said, yes, right away, without a doubt, which, Linda's a thinker, right? She's like, let me think about it. No, she just said yes right away. And it worked out great. It was right between, they weren't traveling. She wasn't playing pickleball at the time because she'd hurt her hip. So, she had the time. And let me tell you, she worked for me 7 days a week, probably 14 to 16-hour days for 6 weeks. That's what it took to get it done. I mean, she finished the bulk of the work the day before Thanksgiving. And it was like, oh, thank God she can have a real Thanksgiving.
That's awesome.
But then while she was working on the finance, Shannon was pulling me customer data. Rich was pulling me sales data, all the sales data, sales commission. And they want to see it sliced in 7 different ways. I was going through all the legal, all the environmental. Wow, the environmental was no joke. The lease, all the things. I have 15 lawyers. They have 15 lawyers. I will say our lawyers were great. Their lawyers were great. Everybody played nice. They said through the whole process, our team is going to be really great to work with. You're going to see. And my lawyers said this was one of the best deals they've been on. They said they were great. They really met us in the middle. Nobody was a jerk. So it went well, but it's just an incredibly heavy lift. And so, we'd have conference calls with lawyers at 10:30 at night. It was.
So summertime insane. Is when you narrowed it down to 7.
September is when I narrowed it down to 7.
When did you pick Encore?
That November, well, it wasn't really November 1st. I guess it was the week before November 1st, so last week of October.
So that moved once you picked them, that
60
was
days.
a quick process.
Yeah, 60 days. So that's why, we wouldn't have gotten it done in 60 days had I not had a Linda working on it. And then right around towards mid-December and early December is when I brought Ashley in because she needed to be involved for closeout. Also, it was just killing Linda and I not to talk to Ashley about it. Like we were just getting eaten alive with guilt.
Is part of the agreement, like when you guys agreed that it was Encore and Encore agreed Fireline, Was there a time limit then? Like, did it have to be done within a certain amount of time, or it's no deal?
You want to get it done as quickly as possible because you don't want it to drag. I had a financial reason for why I wanted it to happen in 2025. Like I wanted it to happen first day of the new year. So I kind of wanted a clean break. I could have done December 31st, but there was tax reasons why I didn't want to do that.
Gotcha.
So they would have done it sooner if we were. I don't know how we possibly could have, because I mean I was dying. We did a thing called a sign then close, and so I signed, and then right before Christmas, and then we did the final close. I will say I got to give a shout out to my bank. They like bent over backwards for me to get things done, because like liens had to be released, loans and things like that I had in place, guarantees that were in place. I mean, can you imagine working with a banking team during the week between Christmas and New Year's?
No.
Like nobody's working, right? My banker moved mountains for me. Shout out to Fulton Bank. But they, it was like teams of people we were down to the wire. I was getting emails at 10:30 at night on New Year's Eve. I mean, it was a down to the wire situation. So then I was a hot mess. And then, so that's why when y'all saw me and I told everybody in the company that I looked like I was going to just melt into the floor. I was so nervous.
So back to that Christmas morning when you told the family, how'd that go? Was it Merry Christmas, and guess what else Santa Claus brought us?
Well, they're not involved anymore. It's only been me and my mom for years. So I took the family out of the picture.
I wasn't
for
sure about
years.
that. So they're completely
I
so
bought
your
them out
uncle and
years ago.
nobody. Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure.
Well, and they didn't have, my father had,
Your brother too, though, right? He was
out too.
okay.
My father when my grandfather was still alive, was like, hey, I'm doing all the Fireline stuff, but like collectively you all own more of Fireline than I do, so he did a deal with them back in late 2000s. And so my father owned most of the company when he passed. And so when he passed, my mother inherited most of the company. So it was really small portions. Like I had 10%, my brother had a little bit. My aunts and uncles all had a little bit when my grandmother passed, because my grandmother still had a small piece.
Sure.
Because she always said it was her family's money that started Fireline, so she always wanted to have a piece of Fireline. But so they inherited her small piece. So we worked all that out and cleaned all that up over the years, and
some of that was like right before you renovated the building, right? All that was kind of a part of it to make sure to pull your fund together and what you needed to do, right?
Yeah, because it was also, we owned Broaders Real Estate, which owns, and I'm still your guys' landlord. So,
you know what? I was
still the landlord.
I was going to ask that. I
Still the
thought,
landlord.
and
I
I
still
said
own the
if she was
property.
smart, she did it. And
I'm still the landlord.
All right, good.
So yeah, I had to buy the real estate company from them. So that was loans I had to take from the bank, which is the stuff the bank had to kind of, you guarantee loans just like you would with your house and stuff. So a lot of that had to move. But yeah, so it was just me and mom in the end. So they weren't involved in the decision-making process, but obviously I wanted to tell them as many
Keep
of them
them
in
in the
person
loop.
as I could. Just the water side of the family.
Right.
And so, we had Christmas and we were at my uncle's house. So we were at John Waters' house, which is always a fun Christmas.
I can only
And
imagine.
my daughter, she hadn't been there in years, and she was so overstimulated by the amount of things that were going on in that house, between the fake food and the art and the things you can and can't touch, and the doll in the corner, that baby Bill that kind of weirds her out, and then there's a mini Chucky in the corner too.
Nice.
But so we were at Christmas, and my aunt and my uncle were there. My other aunt lives in Virginia, so I called her. But we told them and the family, and they were super supportive, and
I mean, was it?
shocked a little bit, but
Was it?
yeah,
I was curious.
They were a little
was
shocked.
oh wow, okay, well, good for you. Okay.
No, I think they were a little shocked.
Yeah.
But also supportive, really, really, truly supportive. I mean, they've always been supportive. They've been great to work with, but a little sad. There was a couple tears shed.
Yeah.
It was a little emotional, but
It's the end of an era in a way.
yeah, for them especially, because I think it's like the last of the Waters family. Like for me, I feel like, so I said this in the meeting, like I'm still an owner of this company in the sense that I've invested in Encore, and I believe really truly in what Encore's doing, and so I get to kind of continue on with it, whereas like they're not going to feel that.
Yep.
So rolling into that, continuing with that, what is Anna's vision, and where are you going to be doing for Fireline and for Encore moving forward?
Yeah, so we, the immediate is, I want to be a part of this company. I'm always going to be a part of this company, but I want to be a part of this company with a little less stress on my shoulders. Maybe not so much stress. And so the immediate weight that's been relieved is all of the business insurance, all of so much of the administrative burden of, even just for you, the vehicle and stuff is incredible what they've already started to do. But the HR burden, the other thing. Like there's just a lot of the legal licenses. Like Cindy and I she kills herself trying to get all the licenses up to date, and they've got an entire legal team working on them. Like it's just great. So a lot of things that I had to do as a business owner have been already kind of funneled up. And so that's like an immediate weight off my shoulders and made me less sad looking during the day. Right. But long term, I, would like to kind of step back a little bit into less of a leadership role. It's already happening, it's already moving in that way. And I'd like to focus on something that just kind of brings me joy. And I have jokingly said they have their talent culture people department. They have a whole culture team. I've jokingly been like, can I get on that culture team? Because that is, for Fireline, but I want to be on the culture team.
Of course you do.
But I love, of course I do.
Of course
right?
you do.
But I think that it's going to be, it's evolving. I don't know yet. So there's a piece of me that, wants to still be involved with Fireline and still continue to drive and lead the organization to a certain extent on a culture level. But then admittedly, there's a whole excitement over career phase 2. That there's things that I can now do that I'm looking forward to. And it's, I was talking to and you guys are not going to be surprised by this because you know me, right? Those of you in this room. But I was talking to one of my insurance brokers that we no longer are going to do business with because now we've moved into Encore's insurance. And he said, you are such a stereotype. Because he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I really want to work with some nonprofit charities. And he's like, what a stereotype you are. But that's true, as I have a couple of charitable organizations that now I've been given the opportunity that I can invest funds to be able to work with, create and do a fund or foundation. So
very nice.
That
No,
was
and there's no doubt.
And
that's
you guys already
That's not
know. Like
surprising, right.
I have a meeting with the head of Baltimore Hunger Project in April.
Are we still doing that?
Yeah, and then I'm going to try and work with her a little bit, and I'd like to talk to her some more. And then there's a couple other ones that I have my eye on. And then I want my husband to be able to work with charities that he's kind of passionate about as well and bring him into it. So there's like a whole kind of philanthropist arm that I'd like to kind of start exploring. But that's more of a 2026. I got to get through taxes this year.
And you're
So
still
I know
young
what
enough
that's
to
gonna look
enjoy
like.
it, right? You're still young enough to enjoy whatever.
And it's not a full-time gig, right? And I need something else that's going to get me excited on a day-to-day basis. And honestly, it's hard because I think I was so tired and I was so burned out and I was so stressed at the end of the year. I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to get through 25. And then Encore's so cool. They're so cool. And I've gotten kind of re-jazzed a little bit, right? And Tom told me this was going to happen, but they're doing some really cool stuff and their vision's really cool. I really love everybody I talk to. It's very forward facing. I feel like it's also really relieving and nice to have somebody come in and tell you how to do something instead of trying to figure it out yourself, right? There's something to be said for that, right? I felt like we were trying to invent the wheel a little bit. And they're like, no, this is the metric that's important. Don't worry about these 72 other metrics. This is the one that matters, right? It's like, oh, okay, I can do that, right? So it has been re-energizing. So I don't want to say I know exactly what the end of the year is going to look like for me, but I'm just really encouraged by everything Encore's doing.
So leading into, with all that being said, the whole idea of when it all came to fruition, this is the decision that I need to start making, going through that process, picking who you picked, which was Encore, understanding that it's a kind of an end of an era of the Waters and the Fireline as being family owned, and transitioning over into Encore, being the partner that they are. The visions that you've had to create over the first 10 years to the 5 years to the next 10 years. So in all that being said, what are you most excited about right now for Fireline being a partner with Encore, and based off of, your ideology of, people first, you love Fireline, you love its employees. That's always in the forefront of your mind. What are you most excited for Fireline and the employees of Fireline moving forward?
So there's, the easy low-hanging fruit, right? There's a couple of low-hanging fruit pieces, and then there's a more long-term piece. So the low-hanging fruit piece that I'm really excited about is the better benefits and opportunities. Like, I'm not going to say that the insurance is going to be like dramatically cheaper. It's still, insurance is expensive for everybody. It's not just us. But the 401k match and things like that is really important. I know to a lot of people that I'm really excited about. But the big low-hanging fruit for me is the recruiting. right? And having an entire team of recruiters who are like professional headhunters, right? That are able to kind of go out and hunt these employees out for us. And offloading that entire process. And we're in the middle of that right now. We're kind of going through some changes with
Which
that
makes
right
sense
now.
for a company that like Encore who wants to acquire to really invest in a recruiting group like that. I mean, that's
Exactly.
just part of growing.
Right. And
Or
so
a
we
big part
know
of
that our
growing.
biggest pain points is finding good technicians. If we could find good technicians, we could do a lot more business, but we just it's hard, right? And so so that's a piece I'm really excited for the employees, because it's going to take weight off of people's shoulders, and it's going to make things a little bit easier for everybody. But I will say Encore totally, I think I said this to a couple of you before, they absolutely understood the assignment. When we sat in those meetings, when I met with all those companies and everybody else brought their private equity, they would also typically bring their CFO, right? They would bring their head of finance and the number cruncher to crunch our numbers. Encore came to the table and brought Jill, who was their head of talent, culture, and people.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Your new BFF as long
My
as you
new
go on that
BFF.
career. Right.
And so they understood the assignment. They understood what's really the pain point for fire protection companies. What's really important to fire protection companies is get people in. Tom is really big on saying, like, top line is top line. It is, we know it's going to grow, because if we're good, our customers are going to give us more business, and we know we can grow it. And that's going to be driven by us being able to fulfill that growth with technicians. So that's the part I'm excited for in the immediate right now, because I think that that's going to alleviate a lot of pain points. But the part I'm excited for in the employees is this the future forward kind of looking and reward and celebrate concept that they have. So this, they talked about the tech bonuses and that sort of thing. And we're still 6 months away from getting that kind of ironed out. So I don't want to like get everybody too pumped up. And it's not going to be like massive, funds, but it's nice to be able to like give everybody a little bit more, not just techs, but office staff, everyone, as long as we're hitting our goals, right? If we don't perform, we should all work together to try and reach those performance goals. And I think that was an important message, is we're not guaranteeing everybody's going to get handed checks. It's if we perform well, then you can.
Yeah, it brings everybody back into that team.
Well, and I really like his concept about scoreboard, right? If we don't track the scoreboard, how do we know how we're doing? And I was always really hesitant to share a lot of that information before, because it would get misinterpreted, right? We have bad month and everybody be like, it's the house is burning down, abandoned ship, right? And it's like, bad months happen. They do happen. But, they're not afraid to do that. So the thing that I love is they bring everybody together in these quarterly meetings, right? And that's something I've always wanted to do more of, but it's expensive to bring everybody out of the field and bring them in for these meetings. But that communication, that bringing everyone together, is part of the culture that really ties it together. So there's a lot of cheerleading going on that, me, I was like the head cheerleader for the company. Yep. I don't have to be the head cheerleader as much anymore, because there's other cheerleaders on the team. I will tell you, Shannon and Rich and I and Ashley have been sitting in on a lot of these, like, they have these calls constantly. Like each week there's like these hot topic calls with leadership, and there's how are we doing calls. They have these calls, and every single one of them is this like really rah cheerleader call. It's like everybody, and there's 72 people on this call, and it's very positive, and it's very transparent, which they're very big on transparency. And I just, like I said, I think, man, I couldn't have picked a better. It really is culturally just such a nice fit for us. I'm not going to say they're perfect. I'm not going to say we're perfect, but it's about as close as I can get it.
I get that from Shannon, because we work a lot closer with Shannon on a day-to-day basis. The same feeling, and I know a lot of the restructures that were going on is separate than this, and it's almost because of the time, and feels like all this change is happening, and we were doing,
that was all emotion.
This was all coming right, and it actually was perfect timing. That's the way I look at it. Like, we're putting in the people in the right places now, so that when we grow, we're successful at that, because we're ready for it. We have the foundation, so it seemed to be perfect timing. It's just been a whirlwind of a month. It was a lot of stuff to take in.
We had to get a lot. I will say, you guys are probably not even seeing it as much. I think Ashley is probably taking on the heaviest load of Ashley and Shannon and Rich with all the financial changing. That was and it's still, we're not anywhere close yet. Like, we've got to get tied into their financials. We have to get, and the IT, like, those are kind of big, heavy lifts that those of us at the executive level are having to work on, that are kind of painful, right, to get through, because our process, the way we track and our charges, and even just terminology of what we refer to. The guy who heads up a lot of their data integration piece, he calls it translating it into Encorean. We need to translate the data into Encore. I love him. He's great. He came from Kistler O'Brien. I will also say, shout out to Kistler O'Brien up in Pennsylvania, because they really paved the way for us a lot. They were a pretty large size, similar to us. And I think a lot of stuff that we talk about with Encore is, at KOB, we do it this way. At KOB, we do it this way. So that's a nice comparison. Yep. And they're close enough by that we can probably collaborate with them. So that's been also a really great win for us.
And shout out to Beanie. Beanie went up there and talked to him, just kind of stopped in.
Yeah, I heard he just randomly popped in and was like, so what's the deal with these Encore people?
Good on him. And I think that'll leave.
He was up there a couple times, by the way, but he couldn't find a way in. And finally, you know what? I'm just going in.
Just doing it.
I'm just going in.
He just went in, and he got pretty good feedback, right?
100%.
Yeah,
really
good
for sure.
Positive. So before we ask you, I guess our closing question in a different way today, I just want to all right, you tell everybody, right? You tell the managers and the or what do you call them, the leadership team, upper management, and then you.
What do you call them?
People.
You guys have a good.
Independents. I have independent managers. I have just the leadership, the broader leadership team.
And then we get on call with teams, and you tell the entire company that day. So
I stumble over every word and totally look like a hot mess on that call.
You did well. You did
so that's done now. What's the feeling the next morning when your eyes open and you're laying in bed and it's all over with? Not over with, but the cat's out the bag. What's the feeling?
I didn't feel relieved right away. I was still, I think I was just so keyed up from months of intense 18-hour work days that I think I was too keyed up. I don't think I really started to relax until this past week.
It's showing. I'm telling you, I know people are going to give me stuff for this, but
I
shows.
agree. But I thought you could notice a difference
I was a little bit better. Yeah, I will say I was a little bit better because I didn't feel like I was having to hide everything all the time. I didn't feel like a giant fat liar, which was bogging me down. That was weighing me down. So that relief was done, but I was still nervous because there was just the tension of having to integrate a lot of things really, really quickly. And so that relief wasn't quite immediate. Yep. I think I was just nervous for, I think the next morning I wasn't feeling great because I was still nervous for how's everybody reacting. A week later, I felt like the reactions were still more positive than anything else. I was really excited by how many technicians took Encore hats from the tech meeting we had. And then, as I've gotten a little bit more settled and a little bit, because the biggest worry for any business owner is, am I going to lose people? Yeah. People are going to jump ship because they're afraid. And the biggest other concern is our big competitor down the street going to try and use this against us? Yep. And of course they will. Yeah. We do it too, right? When somebody, we try and do the same thing, right? Why wouldn't they? But, I think a month in now, I'm feeling. I had Monday night. I had to get a tooth fixed, and my dentist is out by my mom's house. And I finished at 4:30, and I called my husband. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna come home, and I'll get home soon. But it's gonna take me a while because I got to go all the way around the Beltway. It's in Timonium, and to get back out to Howard County. And he goes, why don't you just call your mom and see if she wants to hang out? And I was like,
I can do that.
I can do that. So I called my mom and I said, do you want to go get a drink and a nap? Go have some appetizers? And she went, oh, are you feeling okay? Yeah. And I was like, she's like, you don't have to be anywhere. I'm like, I don't think I do. I think I can take a few minutes and hang out with you. And so, that was she was like, let's not jinx it.
Yep.
But I do feel this past week, it's starting to feel a little bit better.
I do have to admit, that day when we were all upstairs and they were out here making a bunch of commotion because they, I think, just came back from lunch or something. And you were getting ready to start your meeting, and I was going to be a smart ass and say, oh, is that the new owners of Fireline out there? And 2 seconds later, you make the announcement. I'm like, man, glad I didn't say anything.
Yeah, put your foot in your mouth.
Yeah, real quick.
So,
crazy.
We're now a month past all this, the announcement, and then obviously a lot longer than that from the decision that was made. Any regrets?
None. I was at my investment banker. I was at their office yesterday. They asked me to do a video talking about it because they said this was one of the best deals they've ever done. And so this was my dry run before today. Apparently, that was much faster. By the way, that was more like a promotion. And they said this was one of the best deals they've ever seen. And I was talking to some of them yesterday. I said, I think the reason it feels like one of the best deals is because I feel like we got the right company.
Yep.
Right. It's not just it was a good deal. It was a good deal because the company's going to benefit long term. I don't have a single regret.
Good.
I really don't. And
Yeah,
I know
that's
that
good.
sounds really cheesy and y'all can call me full of it, but I really don't.
It's too early. To
You
call
know what? I will
full
take
of-
this back. The only regret I have is, and I don't regret going to market entirely because I think it was an insane learning experience and it was great. But the stress that was added by going to market because of all the rumor mongering that was happening and having to meet with so many people, and it just drags the process out a lot. So there's pros, cons to going to market, and that was, I don't want to say I regret it, but it was, I could have gone either way, but I also don't know if I would have ended up with Encore if I hadn't done that. And so I don't regret it because of that.
So know what you know now, you may have went a different direction as far as not going to market and just kind
Yeah,
of reaching
because
out.
I would have gone to the big players everybody else knows already, right? There's players everyone knows.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know Encore as well. And so
I'd never heard of them
Yeah,
until
they
you
said
mentioned their
that.
name.
Yeah, they said that, right? You probably never heard of Encore.
No.
I was like, yeah, no.
I
never
met
heard of
them at NAFED in Atlantic City in April. But and then Tom tried to call me. Well, Eric Blasser from Kissel O'Brien tried to refer me. Tim Cruin tried to refer me. Tom, and I was like doing the strong arm. I was like, I'm not, because I knew I was getting ready to go to market. So I was like, we can't talk. But I probably would have gotten to know them. But at that point, I was already in the process.
They were just somebody else trying to.
But yeah,
talk to you.
nobody knew them, in
Yeah.
our market because they're not here.
Right.
So,
Right.
which I thought was an advantage, right? There's no preconceived notions about what they're going to do to the
Correct.
business or anything.
Yep.
It's been a ride. I will admit I was a hot mess for a while there, but yeah, I'm very grateful, and I'm grateful to you guys for giving me the opportunity to talk about it because I know, like I said, some people might be.
Well, we're very
wondering.
grateful for you giving us the opportunity to have you talk about it.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. And I know that was a long podcast. I apologize. That was
We're
a lot
good.
of talking, but
Well, good. You want to go ahead? Go ahead, Mark. You go with this final. Let me ask it. Or you going to ask
You
it?
got it.
All right. So, you've listened to all our podcasts. So we asked that final question. What would you today say? So the question for you today, Anna, would be, what would Anna today say to Anna day one, the day that you made the decision that yes, I am going to
transition the
proceed
company.
and do this? What advice would you give her today, knowing what you know now?
Oh, there's a lot, but it's a lot of logistical stuff, right? Like, bring Linda in sooner, If I knew now what I knew about Encore, I probably would have just gone straight to Encore. I wouldn't have gone to market, but I wouldn't have known them had I not gone through this process. So I can't say that advice. Oh, Fred, you're tripping me up. I think I think just have faith in your team that they're gonna have your back, because I think that was the thing I was most worried about and nervous about. And we announced it, and I'm not gonna cry. Tom said to everybody, Tom and Jeremy said to everybody, they said, okay, what's going through your minds? We know we just dumped a lot of information on you. And I think it was Mark raised his hand and was like, well, if Anna says this is a good decision, then I trust Anna's decision. And then you had also raised your hand, and Matt, and they were like, thanks. And they said you, and he said what I was going to say. So, and then I had a couple technicians say that in the tech meetings. And that was that was a gift to feel like, okay, maybe not everybody's bought in, but there's a handful of people that have enough trust that I'm doing what's best for everybody, not just for me. And that was really special. So,
And I think over the last month, that has kind of shined through with everything that's been going on, all the little changes here and there that are being made, some of the things that are coming, to fruition, and then that were being discussed. So I think that is definitely something that everybody is really understanding, that decision process that you were making really was about, not just about what Anna can walk away with or the family can walk away with, but what are we going to have moving forward as employees of Fireline.
yeah, I'm really excited for Fireline. I'm like super re-energized.
Yes.
It's been really exciting to watch. So we shall see.
All
Well,
right.
hey, I really do appreciate you coming on and
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
having that conversation and talking to us about this.
Yeah, buy the Cadillac.
Yeah.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
We'll talk to
All
you
right.
next time.
All right. Thank y'all.
Bye, guys.